In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Please be seated. This is a story from my Margaret Silf wisdom book. In a small American town, there lived an old man. Generations of children learned the stories of the place from him. His door was always open. Whenever anyone needed anything, he was the first one there. He taught the kids how to hunt and fish. Everybody loved him. And again, his door was always open whenever anyone needed anything or if they just wanted to stop by. Now it happened that a valuable seam of copper was discovered running through the town. And didn't that seam of copper run right through the middle of that man's land where he lived in a little log cabin, had for years? The businessmen of the town got together and they went out to see him and proposed to purchase the land. You know, think about the good it will do for the community, they told him. Think about the jobs. Think about the prosperity. But the man wasn't interested in that. He didn't care about money. He just wanted to live in the place that he had always lived, on his piece of land, right there, and nowhere else. Well, the businessmen got kind of frustrated. Didn't he see that this was an opportunity? And every day that went by, they were losing money. The people who were his friends for his whole life became his enemies, and they started to threaten him. Finally, the day came when they couldn't take it anymore, and they said to him, look, either you move off that land, or we're going to kill you. The only person who kind of stayed on his side and realized what was going on was the town preacher. And he decided he had to do something about this situation. He could not stand by. P.S. I love it when the town preacher is the hero of the story. So the day finally came when the ultimatum was going to be given, and the mob started to form to go out to this man's cabin. And the preacher, he ducked out in front, and he made it to the cabin first, and he had a plan. So when the mob showed up, the preacher came out. He said, gentlemen, the old man knows why you're here. He knows what's going to happen. But he asked that you would first listen to his last will and testament, which I would like to read for you now. Well, the men were impatient, but they said okay as the preacher pulled out the parchment and slowly unfolded it. And he began to read. I leave my fishing pole to you, James, because I remember when you caught your first bass with it when you were 7 years old. And I leave my hunting rifle to you, Pete, because I remember the first time we went hunting together. I leave my tin whistle to Joe, because I remember how much you used to play it, and I want you to remember those songs forever. I want you to keep playing that whistle forever. And my old boots I leave to Jake, because I remember when you used to play with the laces before we went on our long walks together. One by one, the preacher read the few valuable items in the man's life that he wanted to give to someone who understood them, who it would matter to. And one by one, each of the men in the mob went home with their heads hung low in the darkness, until finally no one was left. So let's go to the Gospel of Luke. Let's start there. The apostles say to Jesus, increase our faith. And Jesus starts telling stories and parables, making the point that you don't need an increase in faith. You need faith, period, right? He talks about the mustard seed. I have mustard seeds in my spice cabinet. They're tiny. Faith the size of a mustard seed that could move a mulberry tree, which is huge. In fact, ancient Jewish writings talk about how close you can plant a mulberry tree to a water cistern. There are rules about that because the roots were so extensive that they would break the cistern. So people understood about mulberry trees, and the thought that someone could lift it up, uproot it, and put it somewhere else was, ridiculous. But Jesus was saying faith is not a logical thing. Faith is in your heart. Faith is what you believe is possible. And you have to be bold about it. And you have to be all in. There's no halfway. All in. And then he tells a story about a slave and a meal. And I just want to step back for a minute and reflect on slavery, as I try to do from time to time in Jesus' day. I am not in any way trying to dilute the evil of this practice. But if we don't step back and think about it historically, we won't understand what Jesus is trying to say to us. Understand that in Jesus' day, people would get his references to slavery because it was everywhere. Even poor people owned slaves. Some slaves were working off a debt. Sometimes people gave their children into slavery because that was the only way they could eat. And it was considered in Jesus' day that it was better to be a slave than a servant because a slave was a part of the family. A slave belonged. There was loyalty there. So again, none of this is to say that it was okay, but that's the reality of Jesus' situation. And so to understand what he's trying to say to us, we need to accept that as it is. And understand that what he's talking about is obedience. What he's saying is, you don't say thank you to someone who's just doing their job, right? You do your duty. The slaves did their duty, and that was it. And that's our Christian life. We have obligations. We have a duty. And we don't think about it, and we don't expect to be congratulated for doing it. We do it because we are obedient to God. And we don't like to be obedient. That makes us squirm a little bit. We like to be the ones who are telling people what to do. We don't want to be the ones who are being told what to do. That's not comfortable. That is countercultural in our day. But again, Jesus is reminding us that our life is not our own, that we offer our lives back to God as a gift for all that we've been given, that we offer our lives as a living sacrifice. And sometimes it's not fun or enjoyable, but it's our duty, and we do it. We show up, and we do it. So it's a discipline to have faith in God, and sometimes it's hard. We have faith in God, but we also have to have faith in ourselves that we can live that out. And we also have to have faith in the goodness of each other. That's why I love that story that I just told, because you needed all three, right? The preacher had to have faith in God, and certainly had to have faith in himself that he could pull off the plan, right? But he also had to have faith in the people, in their goodness. Because even though there was a moment of complete insanity, he trusted in their goodness. He believed in them. Faith in God, faith in ourselves, and faith in each other. We need all three of those things. We need the discipline and the practice of all three of those things to do the bold and important work that God gives us in a very difficult world. Amen.